My name's Sharon Tapper. I'm the Executive Director of the Music Managers Forum, or the MMF-US. We're really delighted that you're with us today. Whether this is your first time or you've been with us before, welcome. For those of you who are not familiar with us, here's a quick overview. The MMF-US was founded in 1993 and is the leading trade association for artist managers and self-managed artists in the US. We are a registered 501c6 not-for-profit organization, and our work is powered by the support of our members and the generosity of our sponsors. At the core of our mission, there's a commitment to education, networking, and advocacy. So through webinars like today's, we provide ongoing professional development to support our managers and artists navigating the ever-evolving music industry in which we exist. Our advocacy efforts ensure that artist managers and self-managed artists have a collective voice in shaping a fairer and more transparent industry. And we foster connection both virtually and in person through webinars, community meetups, and our all-day summits. If you wish to become a member, please feel free to just head over to our website, which is MMF-US, and click on the application button. We'd love you to join us. We currently support a nationwide network of 8 regional chapters in Los Angeles, New York, Nashville, Miami, Chicago, Austin, Boston, and Atlanta. These chapters host local events, foster peer-to-peer networking, and provide community-driven support and professional development for artist managers and self-managed artists in their respective markets. We are also a proud member of the International Music Managers Forum, which is the IMMF. That's a global network that represents manager organizations in more than 60 countries, including Europe, Latin America, Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Australia. This international reach enables us to stay connected to artist managers and music industry opportunities around the world. To stay in the loop on our events, simply sign up for our bi-weekly newsletters at mmfus.com. You can also follow us at our social media at MMF-US. We are delighted to welcome 2 people I consider friends, and so happy for them to be here today. So we have Jamie Dominguez. She is the National Director of Industry Relations at the Mechanical Licensing Collective, the MLC. We also have Cat Marcasciano, who is the Director of PS Business Management, LLC. Jamie brings 25 years of experience in rights management, publishing, and artist development. She previously held leadership roles at both CSAC and Sam Royalties, where she supported creators and built industry partnerships. She's a passionate advocate. She serves as a governor at the Recording Academy's New York chapter. She heads their DEI committee and is their Dream Ambassador. So we're delighted that Jamie can be here. We'd like to welcome Cat Marcasciano. She has over 15 years of experience in financial management within the music industry. She leads a team that provides strategic guidance and personalized client services, drawing on a background in artist management, marketing, and business operations. Cat holds a degree in music industry from SUNY Onioto, and is known for her attention to detail and commitment to long-term client success. So Cat, Jamie, so excited for you to be here today. They're here to show you how you can maximize your music royalties through MLC's tools and support alongside really smart financial management strategies. These 2 are experts in this. You're in such great hands. So guys, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sharon. Hey, Kat.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. I guess, yeah, let's just dive in because you're going to drop a lot of nuggets of valuable information, I know, because as a business manager, you see everything and basically have to put out a lot of fires and prevent them too. So let's just get into business here. And can you just give a brief overview of uh, PSBM, where the company you work for, and what you guys do, and who some of your clients are?
Absolutely. So, PS Business Management has been around for over 20 years now. Our owner, Phil Sarna, started the company on his own, and it's still independently owned. We work with artists all across the spectrum, all different genres. We also work a little bit in the sports world, but 90% of our clients, maybe even more than that, are music artists. So we really specialize in the artists that are making music, touring, all of that sort of stuff. So day to day here, we're dealing with anything that has a dollar sign on it for you. So we're helping make sure that all of your royalties are coming in, all of your tour income is coming in, your taxes are getting filed. Anyone that needs to get paid is paid. We also assist with developing your credit if that is an issue or you're not super knowledgeable on how to build your credit. That's something that a lot of clients come in and they don't have a lot of experience with it and they just have no credit. They've never had a credit card. They've never had a car loan or anything like that, which does help build your credit. So a lot of times artists coming in will help them build that so they can get their Amex card or their Chase card and be able to be on the road and have credit to work with and not have to be deploying cash.
Okay, so you're really I mean, personally and professionally, you're right there for them through all of it, which, I think people don't really understand the scope of what business managers do. Um, I think they just assume that you're sort of tracking the money and making sure it comes in and dispersing the money back to them, but you really are responsible for so much. And what does your day-to-day look like? What are your responsibilities? And, I mean, I know it's different every day for you,
Sure.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
every day is different.
typically, what would a business manager, what would that entail?
Yeah, so day to day, like you said, always different. There's always different needs for every client, and services have to be tailored individually. There's no really kind of cookie cutter process you can put an artist in and apply the same principles. Everyone has a different situation, especially when it comes to taxes too. So day to day for me really looks like interacting with the clients, their teams, developing budgets, figuring out cash flow for artists. So something I think that sets us apart from some of the other business managers is our cash projections. We try to help our clients project cash flow 12 to 24 months into the future, so that we can figure out where there might be some holes and where you might need to bring in some extra income, or if you have a certain goal that you're trying to achieve, just having this tool to plug it into and see what that looks like at the end of the day and where you might need to make changes.
And at what point do music creators usually bring on a business manager like yourself onto the team?
Sure. I would say, when you're getting into probably the six-figure range, you're really going to have to start worrying about taxes, and you're going to want to form an LLC if you don't already have one, and make sure you're flowing stuff through a company, because there are going to be tax benefits to doing it that way, and just making sure you're preserving the deductibility of certain expenses that pertain to your business. So it's important to just make sure you have that proper structure from the get-go so that you can just make sure everything is organized and in the right place.
That's so important, making sure that you have all of that lined up, especially during tax season, because that can be a nightmare, which we can get into later because we just passed tax season. So I know that you were busy. Um, so what other, I guess you're probably working hand in hand with other members of an artist team. At what who else is usually involved? Who do you interface with mostly? Do creators usually have those other team members in place before they come to you?
Yes. So typically, an artist team, the core team will consist of your manager, your lawyer, and then your label or publishing partners and your agent if you have one. And then typically, a lot of those pieces are in place before you bring in a business manager. So your team around you will usually try to help indicate when that time is as well, when they're kind of things are rolling and very busy and they can't really help manage that stuff at a certain point because they have to deal with other things. So that's when we come in and kind of help wrangle it all and make sure that everything is in the right bank accounts and getting, paid from the right place, and that we're getting all the tax forms for paying people too, right? That's kind of an important piece that we sometimes forget about when we're running a business and we're paying people, is making sure that you're issuing 1099s to folks that you're paying for your business expenses. Because if you're not, the IRS will say that you can't take that expense as a deduction. So
Right.
you need to make sure that those things are happening. And these things can be fairly simple to do on your own when you're just getting started. We can get into some more tips and tricks of how to track some of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point because the artist, the creator really does have to manage a whole team. And I think they forget that they are essentially they're entrepreneurs.
They're the CEO.
They are basically, they need to adopt a CEO mindset. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that gets lost a bit because they think, you think you hire on a team and they're just going to handle it, right? But as a creator, it is your vision, right? And it's your livelihood and your career. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important to speak to that and just really drive that point home because yes, you want them to be able to create and keep doing what they do. That is why you're there. However, they can't just like look completely the other way, right?
Absolutely. So it's incredibly important to make sure that you're informed with what's going on with your business so you can help make strategic decisions and, not question later why someone might have made that decision on your behalf. I feel like oftentimes there are situations where an artist will allow a manager kind of carte blanche to make decisions. But sometimes that does end up leading to the artist kind of being in the dark about some of the financial decisions that are being made and what a budget looks like before you're going out on the road. We make sure we're liaising with management, with the agency to make sure that it makes sense before, if possible, before an artist is even agreeing to do a show or a tour. And oftentimes something will sound nice and you want to jump into it, but then it can end up very quickly becoming a loss.
Yeah, no, don't be in the dark, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have clients at all levels. I mean, I've worked with PSBM in some capacity for 20 plus years probably. And I've seen the level of artists from emerging, to megastars. So you've definitely seen it all and you've seen the challenges from the beginning to when they're household names. What are some challenges that you most commonly see across the board when it comes to the business and the finance side of things? And how can people, how can creators get ahead of these challenges?
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say the biggest thing that an artist can do, and really anyone, any individual can do, is create a budget for yourself. So, for your business and for yourself personally, make sure that, you have some idea of what you're spending. Because it can be shocking, if you add it up at the end of a month, what you're spending on Uber Eats or what you're spending on, groceries or clothing, you know? So you have to make sure you're paying attention to that stuff and planning ahead for the future. So, I see a lot of clients also going over budget. We talk about budgeting ahead of time and making sure we're getting ahead of these expenses and staying within those parameters. So it's important, especially in a post-pandemic climate, to, stay ahead of these things because the costs have gone up about 25% across the board for everything.
Yeah.
So artists are taking home a lot less from touring and live shows. So that's why it makes it even more important to make sure you're getting every penny when it comes to your royalties.
Yeah, everything is crazy expensive these days. And I know when I write down of what I've spent in a month, I am like, what? It is shocking, and budgets are really hard to stick by, but you really need to be diligent and disciplined about it. That is definitely a good practice from the start. The other thing I think that's really important, and a lot of why we're here and what we want to talk about today is the importance of creators understanding, the basic fundamentals of copyright and the ownership of their intellectual property, music rights, royalties, publishing, basically the passive income that can really help them and take them into the future if they manage it right. On my side of things, being at the MLC, and I guess I should talk about the MLC a little bit so people have more context. I didn't do that at the beginning, but the MLC is a nonprofit organization. We were designated by the U.S. Copyright Office to collect mechanical streaming royalties from services like Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, SoundCloud, all of these streaming services. We collect the royalties on behalf of the songwriters and the rights holders, and we pay out these royalties back to you at 100%. We're a nonprofit. We don't take any admin fees. So if you're an independent songwriter who doesn't have an admin deal or a publishing deal, you need to register with the MLC directly, unless, because otherwise you can't collect that money. So if you do have a publishing deal or an admin deal, they'll be collecting on your behalf. But it is, like you said before, it's always good to make sure and just check in with your team and make sure everything's, your registrations are on point and that your catalog is being maintained and all of that. So if you're independent, though, you don't have a publisher, you don't have an admin, be sure to register with the MLC. It's free to sign up, and you can just go to our website and do it today. And, we might have money sitting there waiting for you. So don't leave it on the table. But, Kat, a lot of your day-to-day, I'm sure, is just taking a look at all of these statements with a microscope, with a fine-tooth comb, and making sure everything looks right. What is it, I guess, there's so many different royalty streams now, and it's very confusing. Why is it so important for songwriters to even have just a basic understanding of this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a basic understanding of how these royalties work and the sources that you need to collect from, you're literally leaving money on the table, just like Jamie had said. So when it comes to royalties, if you have an admin deal or a publishing deal out there, you want to make sure you understand what these terms are, right? When it comes to publishing, when it comes to a record label deal, artists are getting paid different rates for different songs, different albums. And you want to know what you're making. And, whenever you do have a leverage point, you want to know, what terms you're looking at and what your lawyer might be telling you, your improvement could be in these rates, or they might not even bring it up. And you might want to bring it up and say, hey, how can I get an improvement in these rates? I'm only making 16% right now. How do I get to 20? What what goals do I need to set? What streaming numbers do I need to hit to have enough leverage to get up these numbers up?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so just knowing all of the sources. So we can talk about, there's the publishing, there's the record label side, the mechanical royalty side, there's your PRO, which is completely separate from those two things. So ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. You're going to want to make sure you're registered with one of those in order to collect those performance royalties. And then, of course, the MLC, like Jamie was saying. So you're going to want to make sure you're collecting all of those sources. If you don't have a publishing deal, if you happen to have a sync on the table, that's something you're going to have to also deal with directly yourself and make sure you're invoicing for those sync fees. So that can be something that, you know, if you're not sending out the invoice or your team is not corresponding with these folks to collect, that's could potentially be more money left on the table.
Right. And, you know, I think what's important for an artist who has a business manager is you're really just making sure all of these streams are coming in and do you ever audit? Like, is that something that you would recommend? Auditing any third parties, whether it's a publisher, an administrator, or a distributor, or a label. Do clients tap you to do audits? Is that something that has, I mean, I hear about it more and more these days. It seems like that's something you just kind of have to do by the nature of, you know, how fragmented everything is and how complicated it is.
Yes, absolutely. So audits are expensive. So, you know, I typically don't recommend an audit unless, you know, a client is making up into like the millions of dollars, because an audit can cost $40,000 to $50,000 sometimes. So you want to make sure that it's something that you can afford to do, number one. But even if you're not wanting to pay for an audit, you can, you know, sometimes hire a third party to kind of quickly do a quick desk audit, because these full on audits I'm talking about are when an individual is going physically to a label, a publisher, and physically viewing the receipts and the backup for everything that is coming in and out. So that's why the cost can be so high. But there's easy things that you can also do, just downloading the CSV Excel statements and running a quick pivot table. Sometimes a lot of these royalty sites will have analysis tools within their own systems that you can use to kind of see, okay, where's my money coming from? Is this where I expected it to come from? Do I need to ask questions about why this isn't where I expected it to be? And then alternatively, you know, and this is not a sponsored anything, but our company just started working with a website called Mogul, which kind of helps find holes in your registrations and where your songs might not be registered. So it's a useful tool that we utilize for our clients in order to figure out where there might be missing royalties.
Yeah, and I guess also just catalog maintenance, right? Just making sure that that they're getting, you know, they're figuring out the splits as soon as they create the song and little things like that. Making sure all the data's right is super important.
That's such a good point. Many times when you're first getting started and you're writing with other folks, you know, you're not necessarily putting together like a formal legal agreement about the splits for the song and how it's going to be distributed, et cetera. And you just want to make sure you have it down somewhere so that when the time comes and it does need to be papered and you want to make everything super official, that you have that information and it's agreed upon somewhere.
Yeah, I think sometimes, you know, the songwriters get caught up in the awkwardness of it, but it's like, it's for the good of everybody. We just want everybody to get paid, right? It doesn't have to be an awkward conversation. It's necessary. So like, let's just make sure we all lock this in and get paid, right?
Exactly.
Going back to budgets, I mean, you know, the way that the money flows is so, you know, it's unpredictable, right? You can get a huge check one quarter and then see nothing for several quarters after that. So the budgeting part is so important. Are there any other safeguards that creators can kind of put into place to make sure they're financially secure?
Yeah.
I guess.
So I think you need to make sure that you are, number one, saving, you know, saving one for your future and two for your taxes. If you're not a W-2 paid employee and getting your taxes withheld, and even in some cases, when you are, if your income is high enough, sometimes the withholdings aren't enough. So you have to keep a close eye on that too. If you're coming to the end of the year and you're a W-2 employee and you owe money, that means that your withholdings are not high enough. So you might want to adjust your W-4 and make them withhold a little more so that you're not having to come out 5K, 10K because you didn't get enough withheld from your checks. But back on the 1099 front, which is going to be a lot of y'all who are collecting royalties, you have an advantage there. So a lot of individuals that are getting paid as a W-2 employee can't take expenses in the same way as a 1099, you know, individual can, because that's essentially business income. So you'll be able to write off a lot of your day-to-day expenses. So you just want to make sure that you're keeping track of those as well, right? So as far as income goes, I would, you know, save 50% for taxes, especially if you are in New York or California. It's at the end of the year, you might have a little bit of excess. Take that money and you can invest it in something. But that's just a way for you to save for your taxes and also save for yourself, depending on what your income level is. If you're a high net worth individual and you're saving 50%, there's not going to be anything left at the end of the day. But, you know, for folks who are making, you know, less than the highest tax bracket, you might have a little bit left at the end of the day, and we'll be able to invest that if you're able to do that with your cash flow. But at least that's something that you can at least set a goal for, even if you can't achieve it right away. But, you know, I would say at the lower levels, like 30 to 40% for taxes at the very minimum, I would say, for anyone who is getting paid on a 1099. You know, there will be expenses against that will reduce your taxable income. So you can calculate those on a month-to-month basis and use that net number to reserve for taxes. And I can send around after this webinar kind of a little budget template and a simple little Excel calculation that will help you say, okay, I made this much this month and I want to reserve X percent for taxes, and it can help you kind of just quickly calculate that amount.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing, because this is so important. Yeah, so 30 to 40% is what people should be setting aside. I mean, because I'm sure you've seen it time and time again. I know that, you know, when back in my CSAC days, it was like there was so much of, you know, I would talk to songwriters and they were like, oh my God, I owe so much in taxes, you know, and they're not setting aside the money. And you know, tax liens and all of that. So, because that is a nightmare. But yeah, I mean, I think those are some important points that you made. What are some tax deductions for musicians that, you know, I mean, I'm sure that would be game changing for a lot of people. They probably aren't even aware of some of the things that they can deduct. What are some tips on that front?
Yeah, so a lot of your like basically internet expenses are going to be deductible for a musician because it's considered research. Anything kind of related to keeping up with pop culture is going to be a deductible expense. So like magazine subscriptions, if you subscribe to Billboard, your internet access, so like your internet bill, if you're buying music, you're buying tickets to shows, all of that stuff can be deductible for you. One thing a lot of people think is deductible, and unfortunately, 99% of the time it isn't, is your clothing. So if you're buying something to wear on stage and it is not like a costume, like a Lady Gaga or a Slipknot, or, you know, Marshmello, though it's not deductible if it's something that you can wear day to day on the street.
Okay,
So,
good to know.
yeah. So if you were ever to get audited, you want to make sure that you can back that up. But I do think a lot of folks include that in their expenses, kind of carte blanche. And that can kind of be a pitfall if you were to get audited.
So what about like, styling fees? If it's not for on stage, if it's not for a performance, does that count?
So the styling fees for the actual individual doing the styling is a deductible expense. So, and when you're making an appearance outside and you're getting styled, many cases can be made that that's a deductible expense because, you might be posting it on social media, and something as simple as that is part of your business. So,
Right. Okay. No, those are all good tips. Do you have like a general list of tax deductions for musicians that you would be able to share?
yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I can kind of send around something we send to our clients every year at the end of the year, as we're gearing up to file the taxes for, the prior year. We make sure that you give us a list of all your personal deductible expenses. So it lists out kind of, if you have a home office deduction. So if you have a specific space in your home that is solely dedicated for business, you have a studio, you have, a vocal booth or whatever it is, you can kind of take that percentage of your home and apply it against all of your home expenses. So, your maintenance, any upkeep or anything like that, your rent, you take that small percentage of whatever you're using for business, and that can be deductible as well. Car expenses, supplies. So I can send a list of all of these different things that we look for as like kind of deductible expenses that are on the personal side that can sometimes get missed.
Yeah, beautiful. That would be incredible. I'm sure you've seen it all, and I always say that the business manager is like the cleaner upper. So you've probably inherited a lot of messy situations, or the artist gets into a sticky situation that you have to bail them out of, in a sense. Can you share some stories? You don't have to name any names, but I think these are always interesting to hear, and good lessons for people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say one of my more like recent horror stories and like onboarding a client is that this client had thought that they were up to date on tax filings. And it turns out that their prior accountant had not filed taxes for multiple years, and was not keeping like a set of books. So like accounting transactions.
Wow.
Everything was kind of like in an Excel sheet, back of the napkin sort of thing. And it caused a lot, like liens and, deductions from their account, and a lot of, it's been taking about a year to kind of clean it all up and make sure that, this person is getting back into a secure place where they can like rebuild their financial status.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I mean, that goes back to like making sure that your team is doing what they're supposed to do. Like, that April 15th deadline's coming around. Check in with your accountant, right? Like,
Right. Make sure you're seeing copies of these things.
yeah, that's a good point.
You know?
What else? Yeah, like this, that's crazy to me that, year after year,
Yeah. I mean, on the styling front, I will say styling, creative, video production, private jets, all of these things I've seen time and again just eat budgets up. You know, even at the smaller, you know, more developing acts, um, sometimes like you have an ideal of the kind of show you want to put on, but you have to give yourself realistic parameters that you can stay within so that you can, you know, take some money home at the end of the day, and so that, you know, you're not just paying everyone else and not paying yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's something that just constantly is top of mind for me, is just making sure that folks are staying in budget and that we can kind of keep production costs down as much as possible because they're just astronomical these days, you know.
Yeah, it's I mean, when you look at the productions, it's insane. So I can only imagine. And the amount of people that they have to pay, I think they just, that gets lost too. You don't realize, like, or when you have a private jet, you're paying for staff, if you have a yacht, all these things.
Right. And, you know, you bring up a good point. It makes me think about also just recognizing the cost of adding one more person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because it's not just their salary, it's their transportation, flights, hotels, per diems. It's, you know, it's a lot more than just their day rate a lot of times, especially when you're talking about a full tour on the road. So
Yeah.
it can seem like, oh yeah, we can just add this one person, but that one person can cost you 25K a week,
Yeah.
you know?
Maybe don't bring the whole glam squad with you.
Right.
Um, I do want to make sure we leave time for questions. Before we do that though, what is like some valuable advice that you want to make sure to leave everybody with before we jump into some Q&A?
Yes. So, as I said earlier, and I don't think I can emphasize this enough, is just pay attention to your own spending. Make a budget for yourself, make a budget for your businesses, or, you know, whatever you have coming up. Make sure there's a budget in place and that you can just envision what you want it to look like before it actually happens, because that can make all the difference in what your bottom line looks like at the end of the day. And just working on projecting into the future, just knowing what your spending is, you know, knowing what's coming in, and really trying to work with that instead of just going on vibes.
Yeah, yeah, right. Don't live beyond your means.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Should we jump into some Q&A, Sharon? Because
sure.
I want to make sure that people maximize the value of Cat today.
Thank you so much. And appreciate that you're going to be sharing all these tools with people that they can actually use and apply to their own life. So greatly appreciate that. So yeah, a few questions here. We got a question, when is the right time to get a business manager and when do you feel and when do you need one? What would you advise on that? I think you could.
Yeah, so I think I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I would say a full-blown business management that's going to like really do all the day-to-day accounting, probably when you're getting into like the six figures or you're about to sign, you know, a couple big deals. That's normally the time, and also your team around you will kind of guide you and help indicate when that time comes. Um, you know, but it also is important to connect with at least a tax accountant, especially if you have an LLC, if you have employees or anything like that, and a bunch of 1099s coming in from shows. At least a tax accountant can also help you wrangle some of those expenses and make sure that everything that you can get that's deductible is included in there. And, you know, I would say you can get someone on, you know, to file your taxes at a pretty reasonable price for just those services if you have your numbers together.
Um, there's another question. I'm having trouble collecting some money from an album. Can the MLC help track money that is missing? I guess this is more, I guess it depends on what type of money. So I'm not, so can the MLC collect some of that money? I presume you can if they haven't collected already.
An album, uh, meaning an album that's been streaming on platforms for, I mean, yes, the short answer is yes. I guess we would just need to know more information, whether you are in a publishing situation, whether you have an administrator, if you went through a distributor, and if that distributor might be handling some admin services for you. There's a lot of different factors that could play into whether or not the money is already being collected and distributed to you or not, or if you need to register with us directly and collect that money.
No, I know you have incredible customer service, customer relations.
Yes. Yeah.
The MLC.
Actually, and I'm putting in the chat, I just put a link to our songwriter toolkit, which has all of that information. It has a 60-second video about the MLC. It has how to sign up video, frequently asked questions. It has a really great sort of digital landscape diagram of all the various royalty streams that as a songwriter you can earn for digital performances of your music. And then there's a songwriter checklist, there's a split sheet template in there. So I put that in the chat, and it also has our support team info. And they will definitely, if you need any assistance, they will get back to you and they will spend time with you. They will absolutely get back to you. So make sure that if you have any questions, or if you're already a member, you already have an account, you can absolutely contact them anytime you need some help.
I've seen them spend hours with people
Oh, they will,
to
yes.
navigate and just try to bring clarity to what is a really complicated subject.
Yeah.
So, just the fact that you can speak with a human being and work problems out, in this arena with them is really such a refreshing change.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Important. So
we've also got, how do you locate a good business manager in your area? Do you have any recommendations? Are there resources? So you're gonna put your trust in somebody who is reliable and good.
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a couple of groups out there that I'm aware of. They are, no, I wouldn't call them like official trade groups, but there's a group called Trusted Advisor out there, and Social Forum. So there's a lot of great business managers that are a member of those groups. So that's always a good resource. But really, word of mouth. Talk to your friends that have business managers. Talk to your lawyers and your managers about business managers that they've worked with and who they like, because they're dealing with us every single day. They're hearing from us. So you're going to want to make sure that you have someone that's communicative and that is, providing you regular information about the ins and outs of your account. We have teams here that report weekly on full transaction reports. Most of my clients, we give them their cash flows monthly. But it's all based on word of mouth a lot of the time. A lot of our referrals come from managers and lawyers and agents too. Agents know a lot of great business managers as well. So talk to your network. That's going to be your best bet.
That kind of ties into the next question, is what to look out for in a good business manager. I guess it's all of those reportings and all of those key things.
Absolutely. And I think the main thing, and we've taken on clients from other business managers, and the biggest pain point that I come across is communication or lack thereof, right? A lot of times I'm hearing, oh, I contact my business manager and I never hear back. I feel like I'm always at the bottom of the list or that I'm not important. You know, you want to work with a business manager that treats every client the same no matter what level they're at. You know, I never want to work with a client and not service them at the highest level, you know, just because they're not making all the money in the world, you know. So I think that's something really important to look out for, is just finding someone that can communicate well and give you the information in a way that you can digest.
It's wonderful advice.
Yeah.
How important are 1024 forms if your artist does not live in the USA?
Hmm. I I don't know the 1024 form off the top of my head. Most of my artists do live in the USA. Um, but I can talk a little bit about CWA agreements for folks who are coming into the US and touring. Um, so basically, there is something called a central withholding agreement that can help you avoid some of those tax withholdings when you're coming into the US. So anyone who's not a resident of the US, automatically for performing the show, they're going to withhold, the IRS is going to withhold 30%. With a central withholding agreement with the IRS, you can essentially submit your budget and say, hey, I'm only really making X amount. Only charge me the 30% on that amount I'm actually taking home. So that can really help cash flow a tour before you get out there, because you're not getting hit with all of these taxes right off the bat.
Got it. Another question here. If I collaborate with people in other countries, can the MLC collect for them?
Yes, the short answer is yes. You know, we're paying for US streams. However, of course, there's, you know, songwriters all over the world. So, and most of them have music streaming on US platforms. So if wherever in the world you are, if you have music streaming on a US platform, then the MLC will pay you. There are certain countries where they might have a collections organization that is already collecting on your behalf, but we would still send that money to them. We would have an agreement with that organization.
Got it. Another question. Shouldn't an independent artist get an admin deal at the beginning of their career? That's it's a tricky one. I guess it depends on where you're at and if you need somebody. Is there anything to collect? Is there anything going on?
Right.
Um,
And just remember that you know you are giving up a percentage, you know, you're paying a commission, you're paying a fee. So whatever royalties you're earning, there's going to be a 5, 10, you know, 15% commission. I don't, depending on who your admin is. But yeah, that's a good point. Like it just depends on the amount of money you're bringing in and how much help you need, how much support you need to actually track all of that. What do you think, Kat? Like, do you generally have any advice on when you should bring someone in for that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with what you said. I mean, now that the MLC exists, I think it's maybe less imperative from the get-go to have that admin deal, because there is a way for you to collect now. Previous to the MLC, there wasn't really a way to collect that on your own. So it's, yeah, I agree. If you have a lot to collect and you don't want to be the one maintaining and registering all of that stuff, which it can get cumbersome, then, you know, I don't think it's a bad idea. And it's not typically not a huge percentage, 5 to 10%.
yeah. What are the pros and cons of creating an LLC as a composer arranger?
So, an LLC is basically a vehicle to, number one, help shield yourself from liability, right? So, if something were to happen, or especially as a composer, you were to face a lawsuit for infringement or something like that, it kind of isolates your personal assets out of that. So that's number one. it's just a separation of the liability. And then number two, there are costs to maintain a company. And if you do end up becoming an S corporation, which a lot of times if you end up making a decent amount of money, there is a tax savings to do that, but it also requires filing a separate tax return, which is an additional cost. And there's also costs annually to maintain these companies and keep them in good standing with whatever state that you're registered with. So there are costs to administrate having an LLC. If it's a single member LLC and not an S corp, everything flows down to you personally for tax purposes anyway. So there's not, from my perspective, a reason not to have the LLC if you're making a significant amount of income and want to, make sure you're able to collect all the deductions and expenses that you have.
Got it. There's also, does the MLC plan to expand on what they collect? And I guess you have a political mandate. I mean, you're there, you can only collect what you're instructed to collect. You can't stray outside of that, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We were formed out of the Music Modernization Act, which was passed in 2018. So we were formed on the basis of that, and we were designated by the U.S. Copyright Office to specifically collect and distribute the royalties from U.S. streams.
So Jamie and Kat, I love that you were able to be with us today and share how you can maximize your music royalties and how you can use the MLC tools and the support that they offer alongside some really smart financial management tools as well. So these all combine beautifully together. So thank you. And we just really appreciate you taking the time to bring this your insights and expertise and wisdom to our community. We're so grateful to you. And thank you for everybody who attended this. So thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us at MMF-US. Stay connected, and we hope to see you at future events. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you so much.